Hello and welcome. So, we are now continuing the chapter of neoplasia from the metabolic alterations. Till now, we have done the epidemiology part, the introduction, difference between benign and malignant. We have done the molecular basis, we have done proto-oncogenes, tumor suppressor genes, and we have completed the tumor suppressor genes. Now, we'll continuing with the metabolic effects that are happening in the neoplastic cell. Okay, so before continuing, I would like you to please press the subscribe button so that we can notify you whenever there is another lecture. Okay, now we'll continue. So, growth promoting metabolic alterations. There are some difference in metabolism of a cell that is malignant from that of normal cell. So, even in the presence of ample oxygen, the cellular metabolism of the tumor cell, it is characterized by high level of glucose uptake and increased conversion of glucose to lactose. So there is fermentation. It is causing conversion of glucose to lactose by the glycolytic pathway. This phenomena is known as the Warburg's effect, or it is known as aerobic glycolysis. This was explained for the first time by Otto Warburg and won Nobel Prize in 1931 for this discovery. So why it is important? Firstly, it is used for detection of malignancy when we are using the PET scan. What is the basis of PET scan? It is detecting the places that is consuming high amount of glucose, and to find that out we are using F-fluorodeoxyglucose. It is a non-metabolized derivative of glucose so that we can detect a malignancy. So tumor cells are using more glucose as compared to the normal cell. Most tumors are PET positive and rapidly growing, and now we have to understand that normally in oxidative phosphorylation up to 36 molecules of ATP are formed, but in the aerobic glycolysis, that is a Warburg's effect, only 2 ATP or 2 molecules of ATP are formed, but still the tumor cell is choosing the method, the metabolic method that is generating less ATP. Whereas we can imagine that maybe a tumor cell will need more energy. So why it is? To understand this, we have to know what happens in our embryonic life. When there is an embryonic life, then also our normal tissues are using the metabolic method, that is the aerobic glycolysis, to yield less ATP, but it is yielding more intermediate metabolites. These intermediate metabolites are required to form the organelles and also to switch and for the synthesis of multiple things, like for the synthesis of storage lipid, for the storage of fat. So that's why it is switching its metabolism for from the oxidative phosphorylation, that is yielding very much ATP up to 36 ATP. It is switching from every other cycle, it is switching to aerobic glycolysis. So here it writes, aerobic glycolysis provides rapidly dividing tumor cells intermediate metabolites that are needed for the synthesis of cellular components, whereas mitochondrial oxidative phosphorylation does not. Oxidative phosphorylation needs a lot of ATP, whereas the aerobic glycolysis yields a lot of intermediate metabolites that yields less ATP, but rather it provides substrate for the synthesis of the cellular components. Because a rapidly dividing cells will need a lot of biosynthetic material for synthesis of DNA, for synthesis of RNA, protein, lipids and organelles before it divides into two daughter cells. So, recalling that the net effect of the consumption of the glucose, when it combines with glucose combines with oxygen to produce water and carbon dioxide, 6 molecules each, which are lost in the respiration. While in the pure oxidative phosphorylation yields abundant ATP, if it fails to produce the carbon moiety, that is a building cellular component. So it is using all the carbon in producing ATP and not producing any amount of growth proteins, growth proteins or lipids or nucleic acid. Whenever there is a growing cell in the body, so our body is also having growing cells. So is it switching completely to aerobic glycolysis? Although in the embryonic life it does increase, there is the stem cell like property cells have increased aerobic glycolysis. But when there is a normal growth, it is a mixture of two pathways. That is, the some amount of glucose is shunted through the oxidative phosphorylation pathway. Small fraction of the cellular glucose is shunted through the oxidative phosphorylation pathway, such that on average each glucose that is being metabolized produces approximately 4 molecules of ATP that would be produced by pure, instead of 2 molecules that will be produced by pure glycolysis. So if there was pure aerobic glycolysis, only 2 ATPs are produced. If there is oxidative phosphorylation, 36 ATPs are produced. But it is using a kind of aerobic glycolysis with shunting, little shunting, so that few ATPs are synthesized by oxidative phosphorylation also. So a total of 4 ATPs are produced. So this happens in normal growing cell, but the tumor cell is completely switched to aerobic glycolysis. So this 4 ATP point where it reaches, where it is also having adequate amount of ATP and also adequate amount of intermediates to form organelle, this point is called the sweet point, that is optimal for the growth. It follows that growth cells do rely on mitochondrial metabolism. However, the main metabolic function of the mitochondria in a growing cell is not to produce ATP, but rather to carry out reactions that generates intermediates. So in this, the main point is that in a growing cell as well as in a malignant cell, the focus of the metabolism is shifted to producing intermediate metabolites so that the organelles can be formed instead of its focus on the ATP. And the example is lipid biosynthesis requires acetyl coenzyme A, and acetyl CoA is largely synthesized in growing cell as intermediates such as citrate that is generated in the mitochondria. So how is this reprogramming of the metabolism triggered in growing normal or malignant cell? As might be guessed, metabolic reprogramming always, as we have studied earlier part of this neoplasia, that the MYC genes and other genes are causing increased synthesis of different products. So those transcription factors are finally leading to this change in mechanisms of metabolism. Metabolic reprogramming is produced by signaling cascade downstream of the growth factor receptors and a very same pathway that are deregulated by mutations in oncogenes and tumor suppressor genes in a cancer. The important point to crosstalk between the pro-growth signal factors and cellular metabolisms are shown. So the first thing that we see is first signal that is shifting the metabolism from one pathway to another is there is tyrosine receptor tyrosine kinase, phosphoinositol 3 kinase and AKT signaling pathway. So whenever the phosphoinositol 3 kinase and AKT pathway signal upregulates, there is increase in glucose transporters and multiple glycolytic enzymes, thus increasing the glycolysis and promoting the shunting of mitochondrial intermediates to pathways leading to lipid biosynthesis and stimulating factors that are required for protein synthesis. In addition, receptor tyrosine kinase phosphorylates and inhibits pyruvate kinase and catalyzes the last step of glycolytic pathway and the conversion of phosphoenol pyruvate to pyruvate. So when it will not be able to convert, PEP will increase. Then why is this intermediate required? It is required for the synthesis of DNA, RNA and protein. This can be better understood in this diagram. So it is telling you that whenever there is increased signaling of the receptor tyrosine kinase and phosphoinositol pathway, there will be increase in receptors, the glucose receptors. So increased glucose will get inside. Then there is glycolytic pathways. So there are glycolytic enzymes are here. So there is increase in glycolytic enzymes, but except for inhibition of pyruvate kinase, that is leading to the stopping of this pathway just before. So the intermediates will be collected. What intermediates? PEP, phosphoenol pyruvate will also accumulate and other intermediates will also accumulate. So this will all be converted and diverted for the synthesis of nucleotide and amino acid generation. Also, through the phosphoinositol 3 kinase pathway, AKT will be activated, causing protein synthesis as well as lipogenesis. Then we come to the another MYC. MYC is also causing the pro-growth pathway regulation and causes and upregulates the expression of transcription factor MYC, which derives changes in gene expression that supports anabolic metabolism and cell growth. Among the most important metabolic factors that are upregulated by MYC are multiple glycolytic enzymes and glutaminase that are required for mitochondrial utilization of glutamine, another important source of intermediate needed for biosynthesis of cellular component. So main function that it is doing is here receptor tyrosine kinase, and MYC is causing increased utilization of the glutamine. Glutamine is entering inside and it is going to the mitochondria, and its metabolites are mainly leading to lipogenesis. So lipogenesis is mainly dependent on the MYC, whereas nucleotide amino acid protein synthesis is dependent mainly on the phosphoinositol 3 kinase AKT pathway. The flip side of the coin is that the tumor suppressors often inhibits the metabolic pathways that support the growth. So whenever the growth is there, the tumor suppressors are suppressing the growth by inhibiting all these pathways. We have also discussed this STK11, that is a tumor suppressor antagonize metabolic changes that produces Warburg's metabolism. So STK is one of the that is regulated by, that we have studied, it is regulated by transforming growth factor beta. So when transforming growth factor beta is a suppressor and it acts through STK11. So it also functions in suppressing the metabolism. Indeed, it may be that many tumor suppressor that induce growth arrest suppresses the Warburg's effect. For example, P53, arguably the most important tumor suppressor, upregulates target genes and collectively inhibits the glucose uptake, glycolysis, lipogenesis, and generation of NADPH. Thus, it is clear that the function of many of the oncoprotein and tumor suppressor genes are intrinsically intervened with cellular metabolism. So, all these tumor suppressor genes, then P53, and all these are having activities that suppress the metabolism, so that excessive increase of these things, so that there is no excessive increase of glycolysis, lipogenesis, there is no excessive organelle formation. Okay, then this is one part, that is Warburg's effect. The next part in metabolism difference is autophagy. So autophagy, what happens whenever we have reduced amount of ATP, or there is increased demand of energy and it is not met, the cell it starts to eat away its own organelles. That is known as the autophagy. That is, autophagy is a state of severe nutritional deficiency in which the cell not only arrest their growth but also cannibalize their own organelles, proteins, membranes as carbon source for energy production. If this adaptation fails, the cell will die out of starvation. But the tumor cells seem to be able to grow under marginal environmental conditions without triggering the autophagy. So in spite of not having energy, tumor cells can survive even without consuming their own organelles, and this suggests that the pathways that induce autophagies are disabled in a tumor cell. So it is too important to remember that autophagy is disabled in a tumor cell. In keeping this with this, general genes that promote the autophagy are tumor suppressor genes, and meaning that the loss of autophagy enhances the tumor growth. Whether autophagy is always bad from a vantage point of tumor, however, it is a matter of active investigation and debate. So it is not very much studied topic, but it has been clinically being related. For example, under conditions of severe nutritional deprivation, tumor cells may use autophagy as to become dormant. So why it is important? Because whenever we create an adverse situation for the tumor, especially for when we are giving therapies. Most malignant cells will die, but some cells are in their dormant state and they will survive because they go in a state of metabolic hibernation that allows the cell to survive in hard times for long periods. Such cells are believed to be resistant to the therapies that kills actively divided cells. So killing of actively divided cells is easy, but the ones that are not easily actively dividing and they are hibernating or they are in dormant stage are very difficult to kill. Thus, autophagy may be a tumor's friend or foe depending on how the signaling pathways that regulates is wired in a given situation or in a given tumor. So, two things that are important in the autophagy are: what is autophagy? Whenever there is less energy, reduced ATP, the cell eats its own organelles or its own protein to form energy. But in tumors, this thing is switched off. And why it is important? Because of its switch off, when it cell can go into a dormant state without going into apoptosis, without going into autophagy, it goes into a dormant state. Actively dividing cells get killed, but it stays in a dormant state, and when every therapy is over, they can really revive. So this is showing that autophagy that normally occurs whenever there is a quiescent cell, there will be it is not having energy, it tries to consume its all organelle that will fuse with the lysosome and it will be degraded, and the content that will be there in the organelle, suppose a lipid or something, and amino acids will go for catabolism in the Krebs cycle where it can generate up to 2 ATPs. Now we come to third difference in the metabolism. So as we know, when there is a energy generation through Krebs cycle, there is a enzyme that is known as isocitrate dehydrogenase. It is a enzyme that is required in the Krebs cycle. But there is a whenever there is a in some malignancies, it is seen, it has been proposed an oncogenic pathway that IDH acquires a mutation in a specific amino acid substitution involved, involving the residue in its active site. As a result, the mutated protein loses its IDH function and instead it acquires a new enzymatic activity that catalyzes the 2-hydroxyglutarate. So 2-hydroxyglutarate is normally not formed. From isocitrate, alpha ketoglutarate is formed normally, but due to this mutation, now it is leading to formation of 2-hydroxyglutarate, that is a oncometabolite. So why is it an oncometabolite? Why is something called an oncometabolite? It is called oncometabolite as in turn it acts as an inhibitor of several other enzymes that require a metabolite called alpha ketoglutarate as a cofactor. Among the proteins that are inhibited by 2GH is a TET family that includes TET2. So this is inhibiting a TET2. So this TET2, why it is important? Because this TET2 is a factor that enhances the DNA methylation, that which you will recall is a epigenetic metabolism modification. So normally DNA methylation, what is causes? There are multiple type of epigenetic mechanisms by which it can modulate the gene expression. One of this mechanism is DNA methylation. So that helps in controlling the gene expression, normal gene expression. According to the model, loss of TET2 activity led to abnormal patterns of DNA methylation. This abnormal DNA methylation turn leads to misexpression of the cancer genes and derives cell transformation and oncogenesis. Some data suggest the net effect of TET2 loss in a lineage in which the TET2 is a tumor suppressor is upregulation of RAS and tyrosine kinase signaling. So we can see this TET2 is because of this TET2 will start to cause the epigenetic regulation will fail. Then epigenetic changes, that is DNA methylation, histone modification, will fail, will lead to altered gene expression and will finally lead to cellular transformation into a malignant cell. According to this scenario, mutated IDH acts by producing 2HG that is considered as prototypically oncometabolite. So it is an oncometabolite. Onco-IDH mutation occurs in a diverse collections of malignancies. So it is also seen in many malignancies like in cholangiocarcinomas, gliomas, AML, sarcomas. It is of significance because the mutated IDH proteins have an altered structure. So it is possible to develop a antibody towards its structure. So drugs have been formed against the mutated IDH that have an altered structure. So drugs have been developed to inhibit the mutated IDH and not the normal IDH, that will not hamper the normal IDH enzyme activity. The drugs are now being used in treatment of the leukemias with IDH mutations. So this is also very important because when we understand the mechanisms that are happening, it also helps us in treating those malignancies. So now in the end, to summarize all three, first metabolic effect is the Warburg's effect. The Warburg's effect is normally the cells is switching from the normal oxidative phosphorylation, it is switching to the aerobic glycolysis. In the aerobic glycolysis, it is forming less of ATP and it is using its intermediate metabolites for the formation of its organelles. Then we can see it is doing it by two methods. One is phosphoinositol 3 kinase method. Second is with the help of MYC transcription. In the phosphoinositol 3 kinase, it is increasing the glucose transporters. It is increasing the glycolytic pathway enzyme activities, but it is inhibiting the pyruvate kinase, causing increasing intermediates to go towards nucleic acid synthesis and also protein synthesis is there. The MYC pathway is causing increased glutamine utilization in mitochondria and its intermediates are leading to lipogenesis. Then we came to the second metabolic alteration, that is autophagy. Autophagy is whenever we are deficient in energy, we eat away our own organelles in the lysozyme to yield energy. Like we can see here, eating up own organelles and using its amino acids and lipid for the metabolism. Then there is oncometabolism, that is, it is seen then the Krebs cycle. There is isocitrate dehydrogenase enzyme, and when there is a mutated isocitrate dehydrogenase enzyme, instead of formation of alpha ketoglutarate, it is converted to 2-hydroxyglutarate, that is an oncometabolite that hampers with epigenetic regulation of enzymes and it causes abnormal epigenetic changes that will alter the gene expression and finally lead to cellular transformation and malignancy. And the drugs have been started to develop against this IDH, which has been linked to many malignancies, including the cholangiocarcinoma, gliomas, AML, and sarcomas. So this ends our metabolic alterations in the malignancies. Thank you.